Still with me is Frank Braeken, Executive Vice President for Unilever Africa. Frank, you have presence in 50 countries out of the 53, 54 on the African continent, and you do have factories across Africa as well, I think just over 20. Some would say that it's very challenging to open up factories and to do business in Africa in many aspects. You were talking about policy and economic changes. And given the fact that you have such a strong experience in Africa, do you think that it is economically viable to open up operations in Africa and produce products locally?
Absolutely. Again, whatever one says about Africa is a huge generalization. There's many realities. South Africa is not the same as Nigeria. Nigeria is not the same as the DRC, the Democratic Republic of the Congo. So to answer the question, is it possible or feasible to open factories in Africa, is a bit of a too high of a generalization. The answer is of course yes, because we are opening factories. We have just opened a brand new savory factory here in South Africa.
In Durban.
In Durban, top of the class, I think, factory. And the investment we are doing in places like Nigeria, where we also have just opened a new savory plant on the same site that we already owned, is testimony to the fact that we really believe in the opportunity of this continent, but also we do believe that it is perfectly possible to put assets on the ground for supporting that growth.
With regards to the savory factory that you opened up in Durban, some would say that labour laws here in South Africa are very different to what we see in the rest of Africa, and it doesn't really make it economically viable for a lot of multinational companies to open up shop here. We also know that you bought the best technology, one of the most technologically advanced factories to Africa through this Durban operation, and at the same time also very green. So give us an indication of how you actually looked at the economic viability of this factory.
Yeah, no, of course we always said must start from the reality of labor cost, the reality of environmental constraints as well. And in every country you obviously come somewhat to a different conclusion, but I think that there's one very important underlying premise in everything we do now in Africa is there is no reason for giving our countries and our consumers not access to the latest technology. And latest technology relates to quality, it relates to affordability, because it must be our ambition to make our products as affordable as possible. But it also relates to the absolute need we see to make everything we do now in Africa as well as sustainable as possible. And I think the new savory factory which we have invested in here in Africa is the sum of these three pillars, and that led to what is a very and highly sophisticated factory.
With regards to South Africa, we know that there's a lot of competition within this space. And looking at the rest of Africa, it seems that you are a very strong player, not that much competition coming to the fore. How are you gearing yourself up for a lot of the other multinationals sitting up and saying, well, we also want to come into the space that you've been operating in for, as we mentioned, over a century?
You know, for that there's only one answer in preparing for competitive battles, and that's being very close to the consumer, to make sure that whatever this consumer might want, might like, that you've covered it off. So basically covering off all the opportunities, and that is actually what we're doing. If you see what we have been doing here in South Africa in the fabric cleaning category, a portfolio play. We want to cater to all different segments of the consumer, and you will see us doing that across the categories. We believe that is the best way to win any competitive battle.
With regards to the various African regions, you mentioned Kenya and Lagos quite a bit. You also mentioned the likes of Ethiopia. What is your main focus going to be in Africa, and tell us why you've predominantly chosen those specific areas? Yeah,
so as always we start from where we are, and that means that we have a couple of very strong pillars in our African business, and that happens to be of course South Africa. That also happens to be Nigeria, Kenya, Ghana. These are the strong pillars historically where we built from. But one of the very important drivers for the future will be what we call white spaces. The recognition that in half of Africa our turnover is less than €1 a year in half of Africa. So think about that. The huge opportunity that we have by just bringing that to €2 a year that we could sell to these Africans, whether it is in Ethiopia or whether it is in Tanzania. So that is what I see as the huge opportunity that we have here in Africa.
Your distribution model is also quite interesting,
yes,
because you don't predominantly focus on massive retailers to sell your products. You're actually also going to the informal retailer. You're actually so focused on this that you're even offering microfinance to try and uplift a lot of these retailers.
Yes. Now, this underscores how Africa is not one reality. You have the situation in South Africa where our modern retail is 60 to 70%. Then you go to Kenya, where it is also close to 60, 70%, so very rapidly developing. But then in Nigeria, modern trade is less than 5%. In the DRC, it has hardly arrived. In Ethiopia, it has hardly arrived. But the overriding reality is that general trade, or the small shopkeeper environment, remains the dominant factor for winning in Africa. We believe that our experience in other places in the world and our long experience in Africa really gives us a competitive edge. What is precisely the competitive edge? Is making sure that our products are available for everybody, everywhere. Deep, reaching very, very deep, including in the countryside. Making sure that our products are as affordable as possible. One of the things that we have been working on very hard is to make sure that our products are made available at the right price and not at a wildly inflated price. And strangely enough, this requires a lot of work. The right price on the shelf everywhere. Thirdly, we want to make sure that our products are visible. For anybody who has walked in a small shop in Africa will know that it is, for a consumer, highly frustrating because you don't have the overview and the visibility that you have when you go into a modern trade shop here in South Africa. So we believe that if we get these three variables right, that this is a huge trust for our business. Not only do we believe that, we see it actually happening as we speak.
You're talking about Africa's strength globally, and it's quite interesting because now Africa has become one of the 8 global operating regions for Unilever. It was previously part of the Middle East and Asia as well. Did this have a lot to do with the fact that you've actually taken on the reins with regards to the Africa operations, having a different insight into Africa because you actually were born in the DRC? And you actually mentioned the DRC many times in this conversation. So tell us about it.
I must apologize for that. It is actually that on the trip coming to South Africa, Paul Polman, our CEO, and myself, we actually made a stop in the DRC. So we are a little bit freshly motivated from that trip. No, I'm sure that Unilever certainly has not clustered the organization around people or managers. So the fact that...
or maybe perhaps your vision, so to speak.
No, I think it is Unilever's recognition that the future lies in organizing around consumer clusters. So from really being outward focused and saying, these are logical consumer clusters, so we organize ourselves around this. Now, it could well be that the fact that Mr. Polman decided that I was the man for the job, maybe he took into account that I am half African. But not for the color, I'm sure. I'm sure he's colorblind, but possibly for the passion that I have for Africa, because I obviously, and he says that many times, that one of the most important things for anybody to be successful is, of course, to have passion for what you're doing.
Belgian father, Rwandan mother, born in the DRC.
Yes.
Tell us about your youth and growing up, and how that actually shaped you into this very strong leader, not only in Africa, but globally as well.
So I think it shaped me in a couple of ways. One, that whilst I was born in the DRC, I grew up in Belgium because where my father had his coffee estate, education was not available. So I grew up in Belgium. But the regular/occasional trips back to Africa have instilled in me the notion that Belgium is too small. It's really a small country. So I was always very clear that I would not spend my whole life in Belgium. So one of the reasons why I ended up with Unilever is that I was very clear. I said, I will only join you if you decide to expatriate me right away. And Unilever expatriated me right away. And that's the reason why until now I've worked in 9 countries, and my whole professional career has been one of a modern gypsy. It also shaped me in another way, that by having this insight early on in Africa, I think I grew up with having to think about social issues like why can people be so poor and why are other people so rich? You know, when you step in and out of that reality. So that makes it that what I'm currently doing, I see it as more than a job. It's an opportunity. When I talk and coach a manager, it is like I'm creating a talent for Unilever, but I'm also creating a talent for Africa. You see, so that's very rewarding.
Looking at your working philosophy, I know that you are of the thinking that you should be very agile in your working environment. Yeah. So tell us about some of the philosophies that you have instilled within Unilever.
Yeah, so Unilever has always recognized the importance of diversity in many ways. Has recognized the gender diversity, racial diversity, style diversity, and if you think about it, the consequence of recognizing diversity is that you also must recognize that people work in different ways, right? You can say we are all for diversity, but we want you to work from 8 till 5, and we want you to work this way in a cubicle that way, etc., etc. That doesn't add up. So it's very clear that if we are serious about diversity, we have to allow people to work in a way that suits them best and gives them the highest productivity. For me, that means that that I let my private and professional life fluidly merge in each other. So the concept of weekend and week is a very fluid one for me. In practice, that means if something needs to be done on a Sunday, it needs to be done on a Sunday. I'll write it, I do it. But if my presence is required to go with my wife to the hospital, with my son to school on the Wednesday afternoon, I don't take a half day off. I just go. So I let my private life equally invade my professional space. And for me, this works fantastically. It gives certainly much higher productivity than having to spend from 8 to 8, and I don't believe anyhow in these marathon working days, because your productivity must go down. And I encourage that also in other people. But I am perfectly fine with somebody who says, Frank, you know what, Saturday and Sunday is real Saturday and Sunday for me. Okay, Saturday and Sunday I want to be switched off. I'm really fine with that. And because many women will be that way. So it is about giving people the right to find the right way of working that gives them the right productivity. It is a bit of a leadership challenge, because if you drive this deeper into the organization, people get very nervous. My managers get very nervous when I push this, because nothing is easier than making sure your people arrive at 8 o'clock and leave at 5. So at least I can see them. Yeah? I don't have to measure them, I see them. So it is a real leadership challenge.
Measuring productivity is far more important than having a 12-hour working day.
Absolutely, but so the question is then, how do you really measure productivity? How do you measure the productivity of a marketeer? How do you measure the productivity of an engineer? You could say how much product comes out of the factory, but a marketeer, an accountant, etc. So what one needs to do is have very clear clarity and agreement amongst boss, employee, or whatever you call it, about what needs to be done. So there is a burden on the leadership to have absolute clarity about the job to be done, so that you can measure it, because without that clarity you can't measure it, and you don't see the people physically sitting there anymore. So my team will tell you that yes, I allow them all flexibility to deliver, but if you promised me something for Monday 8 o'clock, I want it Monday 8 o'clock. Okay, because I don't know whether you were busy or not. I haven't seen you last week, so the only thing I have is your promise. I have it Monday 8 o'clock. I want it Monday 8 o'clock.
Tell us about your relationship with your children. You have 3 children.
Yes.
Do they feel that they see you enough, given the fact that you allow this fluidity between professional and personal lives?
Certainly, I'm remarried, and that already is a statement in itself that I probably did pay a price for my heavy travels and my dedication to my job and my ambition, etc., etc. One gets milder and wiser. I think now I'm certainly wiser. Maria, my wife of my second marriage, she would certainly tell you that I do travel too much and I don't see her enough. But I do try to be systematic in trying to be at home on the weekends, so not these long marathon trips of 2 or 3 weeks. And I try to be very, very conscious about making time available for Sam, my son. But enough? I don't think so.
It's never enough.
No.
That I do know. So thank you very much for joining us. It's been great to have you on Captains of Industry.
My pleasure.